Big tech monopolies have been under scrutiny in the consumer space, but for a long time, the enterprise technology space has been free of such allegations. However, that's changing in the enterprise tech space, and we're starting to see some big tech monopolies emerge, and they're being accused of such, and that's what we're going to talk about here in today's video. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. For years now, big tech companies like Google and Microsoft have been under scrutiny, especially in Europe, in the European Union, for potential antitrust and monopolization types of issues. In the early 2000s, Microsoft was accused of bundling Internet Explorer in their Windows machines. Google had monopolization allegations from the European Union as it relates to their paid advertising. And those are two big tech companies that are consumer facing that have had to deal with antitrust allegations and have been accused of antitrust activities over the years. But for a long time, the enterprise technology space has really flown under the radar of regulators and have really been able to do whatever they want. It's been like the wild, wild west ever since I've been in this space, to where you can get away with a lot of things as a business-to-business big tech company that you would never get away with in the business-to-consumer space. However, this is starting to change here in 2025. In late 2025, as I'm filming this video, we're starting to see a couple cases emerge that suggest regulators might be finally on to these big tech companies. So what I'm going to do today is talk about three instances or three cases involving some of the big tech providers that might change the outcome of how this tech space looks, as well as some of the sales and contractual practices of these big tech companies. Now, if you'd like to learn more about other trends in the industry, including independent reviews and rankings of different technologies that you might consider for your organization, be sure to read our digital transformation report. You can find that by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. The first case of potential monopolization that is emerging in the enterprise tech space involves SAP, and more specifically, SAP in third-party maintenance. What the European Union is doing here in 2025 is they're investigating whether or not SAP is engaging in antitrust type of behavior by limiting customer options for third-party maintenance and support. Now, this is something that I have known for a long time has been an Achilles heel for SAP, in that they don't like the idea of third-party maintenance because it takes money away and revenue away from their cash cow, which is those paying for maintenance and support for legacy SAP products like ECC. This is especially important as SAP struggles to migrate more of their on-premise legacy customers onto S/4HANA, which is where the real money is for SAP. But since so many customers are resisting the idea of moving to S/4HANA, they rely heavily on that maintenance and support long term. Now, the reason the EU is investigating SAP is because they're doing things that make it difficult for customers to acquire third-party maintenance and support. First and foremost, SAP makes it contractually difficult to cancel their own maintenance and support, and they explicitly prohibit third-party maintenance and support, even though many companies we work with are still using that third-party support. So contractually, they make it very difficult for customers to go look at alternative options, which, by the way, the alternative options can be as much as 50% less than what customers might pay SAP directly. In addition, one of the other things that the EU calls out in their investigation is the fact that SAP will actually backcharge customers who decide to move back to SAP support and maintenance. So for example, a customer decides that they're going to cancel support and maintenance for a certain period of time. Maybe they go find a third-party provider, and for whatever reason, they decide to go back onto SAP maintenance in the future. They'll actually backcharge for all the revenue that they lost by not having that third-party support during that gap time. So according to the EU, these are monopolistic types of antitrust practices that are illegal. And so that's part of what they're investigating now. So SAP is the first to enter the bullseye of potential regulation for some of their sales and contractual tactics in the enterprise tech space. And I'll be curious to see if more situations like this follow suit as well. Another big tech provider in the enterprise space that is now under regulatory scrutiny for potential antitrust behavior is Epic Software. An Epic software is a big electronic medical record, or EMR, some might call it electronic health record software, that keeps track of patient information when you go to a hospital. When people type in information about you, it's typically using Epic software or a product like Epic software. Now, what Epic software is doing that's really interesting, that is getting the attention in a negative way from regulators, is there's a new emerging trend in the healthcare space called ambient technology. And there's third-party ambient technology providers that provide data and analysis outside of a core EHR or electronic medical record system. Examples would be a wearable device. This is technically ambient technology because it's capturing information about my heart rate and overall health. And third-party providers are taking that information and using it as a tool to analyze health symptoms and outcomes and things of that nature. So there's a whole category within the healthcare space called ambient technologies that captures technology outside of a core central system about individual patients and their health situation. Now, the reason Epic is in trouble or potential trouble is because they're locking out or blocking out these third-party ambient providers from integrating and accessing the core Epic system. And on the surface, this may sound okay because it is a proprietary technology, Epic software, but the problem is they have these open APIs that typically will integrate with other systems, but they're not allowing the third-party ambient providers to integrate with the core EHR. And their justification is because they're building their own ambient technologies, and if the customers would just wait, they will get that same type of technology from Epic software. So that is a stifling competition in the space, and it's putting some of the more innovative providers that already have this ambient technology, it's putting them at a disadvantage, and that's why they're under regulatory scrutiny at the moment. And the other interesting thing about this too is not only is there regulatory scrutiny for potential antitrust and monopoly types of behavior, but you also have to ask, is that ethical to block innovation or to stifle innovation when customers and patients could potentially benefit from that technology? So that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day, and it's outside the scope of what the regulators are looking at. But for the time being, the other things I mentioned are the reasons why Epic software is now under regulatory scrutiny for potential monopolistic behavior. Now, I've talked about how SAP and Epic software are getting the attention of regulators for potential monopolistic types of behavior. So far, I don't know of any cases involving big system integrators, but I see a lot of behaviors from big system integrators that are very similar to what Epic and SAP are being accused of. In that, big system integrators will do their best to keep out other third parties when there's an implementation happening for an enterprise technology. For example, if a company were to go hire one of the big system integrators to implement SAP S/4HANA, those big system integrators will generally try their best to keep independent providers out, smaller providers, even independent solo consultants out of the picture because they want to own that entire project and they want to protect their cash cow. Now, I'll be honest, I used to work for one of the big system integrators, so I was on the other side of this, and I know very well what that playbook looks like and what you do politically to keep people out of the picture that are not affiliated with your system integrator. There's also a certain lack of transparency that big system integrators are known for, where customers don't fully understand or have visibility into what system integrators are doing and the value they are or aren't getting for the cost they're spending on an implementation. So there's a lot of similarities I see with the big system integrators, and I'll be curious to see if regulators at some point start to poke holes in the approaches that these big system integrators take, because I do think, personally speaking, that these big system integrators do stifle third-party options and they stifle creativity and innovation within the digital transformation space. And quite frankly, I think that's why there's so many failures, is because it's such an insulated industry that creates its own echo chamber of biases and lack of third-party perspectives. But I'm curious to hear from you and what you think. Do you think these big system integrators are acting in monopolistic or antitrust types of ways? I'd love to hear your comments and feedback below. So as it relates to SAP and Epic and some of the antitrust behaviors they're being accused of, we'll have to see how that plays out from a regulatory perspective. I suspect that'll take years to get resolved. But in the meantime, you have to ask yourselves, what can we do to break up a monopoly from potentially harming us as an organization? Well, first and foremost, is anything you can do to diversify and hedge your bets is going to be helpful. So if you're implementing any sort of big tech provider, just recognize that you do have options. You don't need to deploy all bells and whistles that they're providing to you or suggesting to you. In fact, it might benefit you more to work with multiple providers so you don't have all your eggs in one basket and you're not overly dependent on one vendor. And this goes for not just SAP, but any big technology provider. Same with system integrators. When you're working with a big system integrator, you want to make sure that you don't put all your eggs in that one basket and don't assume that just because it's a big brand name that they're going to be able to look out for your best interests and deliver in a way that is going to deliver the most business value, because they actually have economic interests that work against you. They're in conflict with yours. So there's a clear conflict of interest between what a system integrator is going to want versus what you're going to want as an organization. So you need to make sure you diversify where you can there as well. And then third, I would just say that when you are deploying a product like an SAP or an Oracle, you just have to recognize that you do have third-party support options and you have the leverage as the customer. They may feel like you don't. They may try to work things into the contracts that limit your options, but just be sure you look at those contracts clearly, you understand what you're getting yourself into, and that you look at all your options before you trust too much. So trust but verify would be my final parting advice. But I'm curious to hear from you. What do you think this all means for the industry? Do you think this is a trend that we'll see more of? Do you think this is just overstated? Are regulators just getting too aggressive at the moment? Love to hear your feedback and what you think about this whole regulatory focus that regulators have in the enterprise tech space right now. Love to hear your comments below. And if you'd like to learn more about trends in the industry, be sure to read our digital transformation report. You can find that by scanning the QR code right here or go to the links below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.